Welcome to Holding the Line, Supporting Veterans Through Innovation, brought to you by A2J Tech. My name is Leslie Spatola, and I will be your mediator today. During this event, we will hear from our guest speakers about how their organizations provide services and support to low-income veterans. Joining me today are Kevin Dietz, Deputy Director of Texas Legal Services Center, Siedor, Legal Director of Swords to Plowshares, and Doug Lawrence, Managing Director of the Austin Bar Foundation's Veteran Legal Assistance Program. Thank you guys for being here with me.
Thank you
on our,
for seeing us.
on our screen, we are going to move into a few statistics and then questions. In 2021, 76% of low-income veteran households reported a civil legal problem. 44% of low-income veterans experienced at least 5 civil legal problems. What justice gaps or barriers do veterans face when applying for help at your programs? Well, let's start with you, please.
Yeah, sure. What came to mind first and foremost with this question was actually not that specific to veterans, but just folks living in poverty and don't have a lot of income trying to access legal services. And, it can be having unreliable mail service, right? Not getting notice of decisions or not getting, traffic ticket notifications or decisions from the VA about their claim. It can be running out of cell phone minutes, not having enough bus fare or, subway fare to get to your lawyer's office and, go to that legal clinic. So those are some of the barriers that, we commonly hear from our clients. I think another barrier for veterans specifically is their discharge status for a lot of stuff that we do at Swords to Plowshares. So I'll back up and say that the practice areas that the lawyers work on at Swords are VA benefits and discharge upgrades. And within the VA benefits side of things, having a less than honorable discharge can be a very big barrier to getting access to services at VA, like healthcare or disability compensation for their service-related injuries. And I think a lot of folks leave the service with a less than honorable discharge, thinking that they can't access anything from VA, that the door is shut on them, and they can't get housing help, they can't get services, and that's not true necessarily. So sort of undoing some of those misconceptions is a lot of the work that we do at Swords.
Well, with our program, one of the main barriers is the mobility issues of our applicants. Our demographics are still skewing 60 plus as the main group of people that come to us seeking services. So getting to a clinic, it could be a trial for them. Also, the location of our clinics, which ties into mobilities. Our clinics are generally in Austin at the VA center, but a lot of the veterans in Central Texas are rural. So them getting to one of our legal clinics is a pretty big undertaking. And the other barrier that we see here, people always say to us, well, we didn't even know you existed until a week ago. So we need to get the word out more that our services exist and there are ways to access them without getting in the car and driving for 2 hours.
Yeah, I would echo most of what Mo and Doug just said. Absolutely true. I think the one thing that I would emphasize is the lack of knowledge that there are services that they can access, that they know they have a legal problem that they can take action on and connect with services. It's a huge issue across a lot of the legal aid spectrum, but particularly in this area. One of the ways we're trying to address that is by working with veteran service officers on a program with the Austin Bar Association to educate them about our services and give them tools to access legal aid in the Central Texas area. And hopefully if we get that right, we'll be able to duplicate that around the state. I think the other big thing is just our income restrictions are pretty tough. There's a whole sector of folks that don't qualify for legal aid, but can't really afford a lawyer. And that's, I think, something we struggle with the restrictions on the funding that both Doug and I at TLSC base when we're trying to extend services to clients.
Those are all very good points.
Mhm.
What disqualifies veterans, and we just kind of touched on that, what disqualifies veterans from receiving legal services? Are there areas where this might not apply?
Yeah, so I can share that, our grants, the restrictions around our grants are probably our biggest barrier to being able to help folks. And a lot of times that looks like location specific, like we'll get a grant from a locality and it's funding, only folks who are residents of that locality, right? We have a grant that has a restriction around a minimum time and service requirement. And so the veteran needs to have served in the military a certain amount of time in order to be funded by that grant. And unfortunately, that the restriction for most vets is 24 continual months of active duty. And that's not everyone. And there's, for example, the majority of folks who were kicked out under Don't Ask, Don't Tell were kicked out with less than 18 months of service. And so that's a whole population of vets, that we wouldn't be able to serve under that grant. And there's an exception to that minimum time and service requirement if you have a service-connected disability, but we can't pay for our work helping them achieve a, service connection and getting that by this grant because while we're working on them, they don't qualify. So, the other thing I've also encountered a lot with grants is, if there's a requirement around they being homeless or at risk of homeless, and that definition can be very specific. Folks who are currently incarcerated don't qualify, right? So that's another population that often isn't funded. So I hate to sound ungrateful for the grant funding, I am, but there are parameters that come with it that can be barriers to, to being able to help folks who come through our doors or that we want to, reach, but don't have funding to actually help.
Oh yeah. Most of the people that are ineligible for us are ineligible due to income and asset guidelines from our funders. If we have a veteran who's 100% service connected and they're living by themselves and have no other income, they're going to be ineligible because their monthly take from the VA is going to be more than the 200% of poverty guidelines. We also have to reject people for certain case types, like if it's a fee generating case, a criminal case or immigration, we're not allowed to, we aren't allowed to deal with those. We also have our own programmatic disregard thing is if they already have another attorney. We don't want to talk to someone who already has an attorney, so we stay away from those. But the vast majority of it comes down to income and household size, because we still have to count everybody in the household and their income. So a veteran may qualify on their own, but their spouse makes enough money that for two of them, they're still over the poverty guidelines and we won't be able to serve them.
I really don't have much to add to what Mo and Doug just said, just talk about quickly. We do screen veterans for other programs that don't have as severe income restrictions. So our legal hotline for older Texans is one where there's not an income limitation, and often we can put veterans in touch with them, especially around public benefits, consumer and eviction issues. That's also true. We have a higher income threshold for working with crime victims. So.
Thank you. Yeah. 7 of the top 10 unmet needs of unhoused veterans are legal issues. Court fees and fines, credit issues, expungement of criminal records, child support, family law, discharge upgrades, appeals, and tax issues. How does your program help overcome these legal barriers?
So I can start by talking about our discharge upgrade work. My experience working with vets, that is consistent with what that statistic, that this is a very much an unmet need. And one of the ways that we try to reach the most folks who have this particular legal issue is we run Zoom legal clinics, discharge. Oh, I look like I'm frozen. Can you guys still hear me? Okay. So about every month we run a discharge upgrade legal clinic over Zoom with volunteer attorneys, pro bono attorneys through our network. And they meet with clients, they go through a whole interview protocol with them and give them advice and guidance on the process, and leave them with a self-help guide that hopefully is going to help them be able to navigate that process on their own. And then, in that clinic, we also are screening for folks who have meritorious cases that would be good bono attorney for ongoing representation or for us to take in-house at Swords to Plowshares. So that is one way that we are trying to meet one of those unmet needs.
We also do phone and video legal clinics that so that people can call us. Sometimes as the issues arises, we've networked really well with a lot of VA social workers. So when the applicant is meeting with their social worker and they're discussing the legal issue that's causing problems, they just call us right away. They set up and we kind of have office hours for people that may be the only time they can get on a phone or a computer is when they're seeing their social worker or visiting their veteran service officer. So, we try to be as open to getting them, the service as possible. We also have our clinics at the same time and same date of every month. So over time, people just know that on the second Monday of the month, if they show up at 1 o'clock at the VA outpatient center, there are going to be attorneys there to talk to. So that's basically what we do is, we try to make ourselves as open as possible so they can get to us and then we can get them to the right place for assistance.
So TLSC has a veterans program within it that does work on all of these issues that were identified, direct service work. Without repeating what Mo and Doug just said again, we are working on this project with the VSOs through our legal kiosk program that TLSC is working on with a special project around getting the VSOs in their hands a laptop or a computer with a printer that has guided access to information, most of which is available on Texas Law Help. So the ideal, if we were doing this conversation a year from now, would be that we had the VSOs trained not to act as paralegals, but acting as trusted intermediaries for those veterans that because of income or otherwise we can't connect with. And this is a project we're doing in collaboration with Austin Bar Association, where we're building out on those kiosks, which is really a user interface for the VSO, a landing page that will have some guided navigation to building out end-of-life planning documents, wills, powers of attorney, mental health directives, and things like that. And eventually adding on expunctions and ID recovery as well, because those areas have been identified as high need areas, both for veterans and other populations that we try to serve with the kiosk project.
84% of low-income veteran households did not receive any or enough legal help with their substantial legal problems in 2021. How does your organization collaborate with other local programs? Doug, let's start with you.
Well, one of the first things we try to do is not duplicate services with other programs. That just creates confusion with the applicants, and it's not a good use of the limited funding resources. So our organization does legal clinics, both drop-in legal clinics and virtual and phone clinics. So we invite all of the other organizations to send their attorneys to our legal clinics to talk with people. What we try to do is make sure everybody knows what we're doing and when we're doing it. And then we also like to create referral networks with other collaborators. You know, like, hey, you have 4 attorneys on staff and we're a volunteer organization. This person is eligible. We couldn't place it with a volunteer. Would you guys consider it? So then we can work together and get the people to where they need to go legally. We also work with, you know, anybody who provides services to low-income people, because then we can refer amongst each other, which you know, gets us clients, gets our clients to where they need to go. And it just works really well if everybody knows what you're doing and you make sure that, you know, you not really stay in your lane, but you're like, we try to do the clinics as best as we can. We want everybody to know that we're going to be putting on the clinics. You guys don't have to worry about a legal clinic. That's, you know, and then when you work with someone who has like more funding than you, then you can like, okay, what can we do to help you guys create this project and make it go forward, you know, based on our resources. So you try to make yourself as available to everybody as possible.
Kevin, would you like to add anything?
I would just say and sorry to harp on the kiosk project, but it's kind of on my mind. That's the project we're working on with A2J Tech right now. But that project has allowed us to get out into the community, and you could substitute anything for kiosk project, a training for VSO, something in particular, but being able to sit in their offices, talk to them about the project, educate them about what we do, what the Austin Bar does, and services generally has been a pretty powerful lever for us to get the word out about what we're doing generally. And just it's made us be, you know, step outside of our comfort zone a little bit in terms of getting out into the community and having those conversations with other potential stakeholders.
Thank you. Mo, I know that you had lost service. Where we are is discussing how your organizations collaborate with other local programs to bring a holistic approach.
Yeah. Can you hear me okay, Leslie?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. So sorry about the tech issues on this tech webinar. So in terms of how we collaborate, one of our main partners is the VA. So we host a lot of legal clinics at the VA and collaborate with them immensely to reach veterans who need our services. We also work with doctors at VA, mental health clinicians, to put on a training every other year on working with clients who experience post-traumatic stress disorder. So through the partnerships with the VA, we've met these doctors and now jointly put on a training for lawyers on working not only with veterans, but other, trauma survivors, like those who've experienced domestic violence or those seeking asylum. So that's one partnership that's come out of that. And we've also gone into VA facilities and trained staff. Again, there's a lot of misconception, right, about what folks with less than honorable discharges are eligible for at VA. So we train the staff. We've also given similar trainings with county veteran service offices about what benefits folks are available to folks who have, that eligibility barrier. So those are some ways that we've collaborated with folks in our area.
Consequences of unresolved legal issues. Unaddressed legal problems can worsen the risks that veterans face, from homelessness to incarceration and from joblessness to suicide. Are there programs or resources that legal aid leaders should cultivate in their local areas?
So I can start sort of similarly to my last answer. I think one of the main things that we have found to be super helpful is meeting with local providers and making sure they know about our services and who we can serve. So understanding how to make a referral to us and what are, who are the folks that we can serve if we have any restrictions, so that folks aren't ping-ponged around and being told that we can help them and then we tell them we can and then we send them somewhere else. So educating folks on that criteria and how best to connect vets in our area to us, and vice versa, of course. I think, I mentioned the VA, but, it's also important to sort of expand out to other community resources that maybe don't specifically serve veterans. we've had a lot of luck building a partnership with the LGBTQ Center in San Francisco, and also there's a women's center there. I think with the veteran community or population specifically, there's a lot of folks who, maybe didn't have a great experience in the military, don't necessarily identify as veterans, don't think of themselves as a veteran. Maybe they didn't serve for very long. Maybe they got picked out. Maybe their treatment in service wasn't great. They don't necessarily feel comfortable going to, Swords to Plowshares office and as a veterans specific space. So meeting those segments of the veteran population where they're at, and clearly messaging that they are welcome and that we want to serve them, has been important for us.
Really good points. Very good points. Doug or Kevin, something?
Yeah, I would you definitely have to create a list of providers in your area. They need to know, and it doesn't matter what they do. It could be a food pantry or a mental health center, or even just a place people go to get medical care. They need to know that you exist. And then people, if they're talking to a social worker or an intake worker at a health center, they're going to find, hey, well, this place does, legal services for you. You just want to be connected with any place that can help you reach your people. And for us, that includes VFWs and American Legion posts. Those are very good places for us to let know we exist, because the veterans go there to hang out. It used to be we're in the VA outpatient center, and we just had to sign up, and that would be all we needed to do because so many people went through the VA outpatient clinic. Well, now they're doing telehealth more than ever before. So at the clinics, we had a clinic on Monday. I walked through the entire VA clinic, and there were 25 people in that clinic. I mean, in the whole place waiting to see doctors. And there used to be hundreds of people in there every day. So just having to sign up at the VA isn't going to work for us anymore. We got to find out where everybody's going. And, it's a list you have to keep updating, because programs come and go or people change, and it's something you have to really stay on.
Thank you. Kevin, do you want to add anything to it?
No, I think between Mo and Doug, they covered it.
Great, thank you. In 2021, 72% of homeless veterans in emergency shelters, safe havens, or transitional housing programs reported having a disability. What kinds of tech trends are you noticing that focus on veterans, especially those aimed at helping disabled veterans?
Yeah, so I can share that I sort of have a good, bad, and neutral example for this question. One thing I wanted to share in terms of good is that the policy team at Swords to Plowshares have put together a website it's a part of our website called our Toolbox, and it's essentially a landing page for providers who are working with veterans, and it gives a bunch of information about transitioning from military to civilian life, being a veteran student, mental health struggles, commonly experienced with in veteran communities. And so that is one sort of tech thing that we have developed. Our work with A2J has been around revamping our self-help guides. So the legal team at Swords has developed a library of self-help materials on various issues related, again, to VA benefits or discharge upgrade, that are available on our website. And they've redesigned a number of them in a way that's more plain language, is more accessible and sort of user-friendly than the, essentially the Word doc versions that the lawyers at Swords put together years ago. So those are some good. And then in terms of bad, the first thought I had when I read this question was about all the claim sharks that are out there, that I don't know if folks have heard about this in the news, but there's a trend of these sort of for-profit businesses that have pretty predatory, unlawful business practices where they go after veterans and try to charge them a fee to help prepare their initial claims at VA, or to prepare their claims as unaccredited people, which is unlawful under federal law. And those protections in federal law exist to make sure that there aren't nefarious practices out there taking advantage of veterans. There's whenever you have a population that's potentially eligible for money, whether that's GI Bill or disability compensation, you're going to have folks who are trying to get a chunk of that, right? And so we have seen an uptick in these businesses, and they are often pretty vocal on TikTok and YouTube and on Reddit. There's a whole subreddit on Reddit that's actually run by one of these claim sharks, but it looks like it's a normal VA benefits subreddit. So there's different ways that I have seen in the tech world that these companies are using to try to get veterans to pay them money for services that are often free in their area with their county veteran service office or VFW or organizations like us. And then one I have that's sort of like an unknown to me, which is how the VA is currently using AI to process claims. So I don't have much to say about it other than I've been hearing that this is something that the VA is doing, and and I'm curious to see what this looks like over the next 5, 10, 15 years, and how that's going to maybe change how the VA is making decisions about whether somebody has a service-connected disability or someone's eligible for benefits.
With us, one of the things that has been an increasing trend is, and it goes back to the mobility issue, is our video linked meetings between the applicants and the attorney. Now that people can do that, at first, when we were first doing it, no one wanted to do it. Everyone wanted to come in person. Well, now people are looking at things on the whole and say, well, you mean I can stay at home and talk to the attorney over the internet? And we're like, yes. So that's really, at least with our program, that's like been the number one thing. Where people that have those mobility issues are now speaking with the attorneys from the comfort of their own home, and no longer worrying about taking 13 buses to get to the VA or having to travel a long distance. And that's helped. And when talking, Kevin, with the kiosk, when we can get to the point where they can start sending us documents to review over that, the days of someone having to drive a long distance from out in the rural area into the city to get help are going to be over.
Yes, specifically speaking to tech trends, what we're trying to do is embed veterans resources and guides into the technology we're deploying into communities in more rural areas with veteran service officers' offices, where there'll be a kiosk in their office, which is really, if you think about it, just a user interface at the end of the day with a scanner and a printer attached to it. So what we're working on right now that hasn't, and I'll put a link, I put a link to the overview of the kiosk in there, but I'll put a link to the kiosk interface, which is still a work in progress at this point. But what you can't see there now that we're working on is some guided navigation about legal needs assessment. So when a veteran is there, either on their own or with a trusted intermediary at a VSO office or a homeless shelter, that they can get some of that guided navigation about identifying legal issues. And I think that particular project doesn't have AI embedded in it at this point, but but you can see that coming down the road, especially with document assembly and things like that. We do have a separate project around expunctions that we're doing that will rely on AI to build expunction documents. But that's probably 12 months out before that goes live. So it's both the relationship building when you get the technology out into the community. We run for Texas Law Help, so we have a lot of resources on that website, but having a physical manifestation of our projects in the hands out in the community, we see a real benefit to that.
That actually leads us into our next question. How have you marketed your technology to veterans? What worked?
So we have a really great communications team at Swords that has done a lot of the heavy lifting around this for us. So they're active on social media, TikTok and Instagram. trying to get the word out. And I know, right now we've finished the self-help guides that I mentioned, that we worked on with Access to Justice, but we are, or A2J Tech, but we are still working on putting together the website where it's all going to get housed. So we're excited to, put that out there on the social medias and in our networks. And then there's also a pretty active listserv, actually, of veterans lawyers that, when I have things like this to share about, innovations or updates or things that we're working on, that's been a very helpful way of at least getting that information, not to veterans directly, but to folks who are serving them, so that hopefully, it trickles down to them.
Oh, we have our flyers we put out that have QR codes on them that the veterans can scan the QR code, takes them directly to the application. And the application will ask them, do they want to meet in person? Do they want a phone call, or would they rather have a video conference? That's how we basically got all that information out. And of course, we send it to all the other providers too. And that's what's have us trending towards video and phone conferences in much larger numbers than the walk-in clinics.
How sustainable is your project outside of the grant funding received?
Yeah, so in terms of the self-help guide, it was always a priority of the team at A2J Tech to empower the comms team at staff to know how to use the tools that they were using, that they, to make the guides, and gave us templates and designed them in Canva in a way that we could, because we're a nonprofit, we have access to a Canva account for free, pro account, I mean. So we basically, we worked with Bailey, who was absolutely wonderful at sort of setting us up for success in terms of being able to, down the road, as we have new guides that we want to write, be able to, use a lot of the knowledge that they shared with us about plain language and having these templates to basically replicate it. And also, laws change, right? Policies change. There are ways, that we need to be able to update this information to keep it current and actually helpful to folks. And so to be able to, make those edits internally and make those changes so that we can keep folks up to date has been super helpful.
Well, we've been working on trying to survive a decline in funding, or maybe funding going away altogether, for the last few years. And then that's how we came up, we met with A2J, and now we have a volunteer portal and a database that are easy to access. So once we get the volunteers into the portal, they can sign up for clinics, take cases, and do all this on their own time, without us having to basically spend most of our time sending emails, phone calls, following up, pestering people to volunteer. Also, the database syncs with the portal, so when the volunteers are involved, they just have one sign-in, and then everything they need is right there. For all the cases they have, they can put their notes in, they can create a link to speak with them, the clients, over the video. So if all of our funding went away, the program could still go forward just with the portal and the database basically running themselves. I mean, it wouldn't take much work. I mean, we're at the Bar Association, so I mean, maybe less than an hour a month, someone checking the portal and database to make sure things are flowing. We have a memorandum of understanding with the VA to use their facilities for in-person clinics, and that's for next few foreseeable years. So, thanks to the technology, if all the funding dried up, we would still be around. It'd just be a little different, but people are getting very used to doing everything on their own, through the internet.
I think for us, if the grant, outside of the grant funding, is something, of course, we think about a lot, probably the most honest answer in October of 2025, if all the grant funding went away, our veteran services would go. We are trying to think of how, especially the kiosk model, because we're all facing these potential funding cuts, I think. how that could turn into more of a subscription-based model for some of the county, city governments, libraries that we interface with and have trusted relationships with, community colleges, places that have dedicated funding streams. And then having a tool that, like Westlaw or Lexus, something like that, that people can see the value in subscribing to, might be a way to continue some of this work outside of the grant funding that we receive. I don't know that it would ever replace grant funding, but it could be supplemental.
Thank you. So we've talked about how each of your organizations have served veterans. But how have you stretched your dollar when providing these services?
Yeah, so I don't, that's a very good question. I think, you know, for us at Swords, it's been, you know, trying to serve as many folks as possible, putting on Know Your Rights trainings, putting on, you know, sort of group training, so we're meeting as many veterans as once. I think, you know, we have a very conservative CFO who's on top of it all and making sure we're all, you know, being very, you know, budget conscious. And I, you know, of course, you know, the most obvious answer is relying on those volunteers, right? The pro bono attorneys who take cases, who staff our clinics. We were just down at a stand down this last weekend in San Jose, put on by the Santa Clara County CVSO, staffed entirely, you know, by volunteer attorneys who just, you know, work at the law firms in the San Francisco Bay Area, who took time to, you know, come down and meet with folks. So to be able to rely on them to be able to like expand our capacity has been really integral and vital to the legal work that we're doing at Swords, and not only in the direct legal services field, which is, you know, our bread and butter and the bulk of our work, but we also do a lot of more impact work or national level advocacy based on what we're seeing on the ground working with vets, and being able to loop in pro bono attorneys to help, you know, draft and file an amicus brief, you know, and a case on veterans benefits that's going to SCOTUS, or work on a rulemaking petition at VA, to try to get, you know, some regulatory change that's going to improve veteran access to VA care, right? Things like that. To be able to sort of rely on those heavy hitter law firm attorneys who have all those resources and are able to do that work and who have that experience. And that's been, you know, really very, very helpful for us.
With us, it's trying to stay away from overhead. We don't rent any spaces where we do clinics. When we do clinics where people invite us and allow us to use the space for free. We want to get away from all technology that has like a monthly fee. You know, we don't want to pay $500 a month for a database that does much more than we need. We need things that just work and be right on point. We don't need a lot of bells and whistles for that. You know, and with the technology, you can get away from paper and pencils and pens, and those things add up over the long haul. You know, you print out a bunch of applications and you change the application to meet your grant. Well, then you got 200 applications you're tossing into the recycling. Well, if it's online, you know, there's no waste there. And I think if you can do that, you can make your grants stretch out. Now, my program is 2 people and we both work from home. But if we need to, we can go into the Bar Association offices, but they don't charge us anything to meet clients there. So, and that's why we need the technology to make it easier for us to do stuff, so we're not spending money to get things done. So that for us, I mean, like, we take care of the money better that we get. We take better care of it than our own money. I mean, we don't spend money unless we absolutely have to. And you get used to doing that, and you find organizations that think the same way you do and can help you get the technology you need without having to pay a lot for it.
I'm going to answer this question related to the technology that we're working on. And the answer to that, because we're in a demonstration phase and building something, we're not really stretching dollars right now about that particular project. So what we're trying to do right now is spend money to make Doug's life easier 12, 24 months from now. And really not so much Doug, but his pro bono volunteers, and to help educate them about the specific legal needs of veterans. For our direct services, I'm not going to just repeat the things that Mo and Doug just said, but forward looking, I think Doug is right. The more we can cut down on our travel with technology, the better, and make technology that is user, that we're putting the user of that technology at the forefront, which is a really, really hard thing to do. And legal aids generally do a terrible job with that in terms of accessibility for disabled clients, for low proficiency English readers and multiple languages. It's something that we struggle with a lot and are intentionally investing a lot of money in right now, of really trying to focus on usability of the technology so that it's not wasted technology. And the other thing I'd say, just in terms of stretching dollars, is the concept of community justice workers that I'm sure you guys have heard about or can Google about. The Frontline Project has tons of information on that. We really are trying to philosophically think about our services in that way so that we're educating trusted intermediaries out in the community to assist all of our client populations, including veterans. So we're trying to, when we're designing something, when we're talking to people, we're trying to educate them to empower them to be these trusted intermediaries. We've got a long way to go. There's a whole separate project in Texas that is working on that issue. But that is something that we're thinking about constantly, is how do we leverage the dollars that we're spending to train and identify trusted intermediaries.
Thank you. How are each of your programs recruiting your volunteers and keeping your volunteers interested in pro bono work?
Yeah, so I can say that the field of veterans law and working with veterans, it tends to be a pretty popular one with volunteer attorneys. Folks tend to want to work with this population of folks. I think for us, we focus our volunteer attorney work on just discharge upgrades, not the VA benefit side of things. And the reason we've done that is because discharge upgrades in particular are a much more sort of straightforward application. The arguments to support a discharge upgrade application tend to be equity arguments that a lot of attorneys are already familiar with, having gone to law school. And the applications tend to be paper applications. So for attorneys like, perhaps who work in transactional law or, mergers and acquisitions, corporate practice areas, who maybe don't necessarily want to have to go in front of a judge or do oral advocacy work. Like, this is a good practice area for them. So there's all these ways that it's already sort of set up for success in terms of being an appealable pro bono opportunity for volunteers. And but in the same token, it's a brand new practice area for almost everybody who volunteers with us, right? Nobody comes to us with any sort of background or previous substantive knowledge on how to do a discharge upgrade. So there's that fear that, a lot of, I think, lawyers tend to have about not wanting to do something they're not competent in, which of course is like, the rule number one of legal ethics, don't do that, right? Or I think maybe confidentiality is rule number one, but you know what I mean? It's like, you really shouldn't do that, right? And we all know that. And so we take very seriously empowering the volunteers with really robust training materials. So we have training videos. We have a Notion website that we have created that is our pro bono toolkit, where we have exemplars and all the memorandum that are relevant to discharge upgrade work, citations to the law, different materials that are going to be helpful for them. So they have, they're sort of set up for success and feel comfortable being able to advocate for a veteran in this space. And then we provide, ongoing support, and we sort of tell them this from the onset, like, this is your point of contact on the legal team. Here's all your resources. Here's everything you need. If you have any questions, this is the person you reach out to. This is how you reach out to them. Here's the Calendly link to set a meeting with them. Like, all of that is sort of set up front, so that they feel like, okay, I can handle this. I can do this. And then we, check in with them periodically, regularly, so that we make sure they're on top of it and actually, able to reach the client. Nobody's falling through the cracks, things like that. So all of those universe of things that have seemed to help us in terms of keeping and recruiting volunteers, so that they feel like, okay, they can handle it.
Oh, definitely. And as a practical matter, one of the first things I tell volunteers is that we carry our own malpractice insurance and premises liability insurance. So they're covered if someone walks into the clinic and falls down, or if somebody makes a claim against them. That always relieves some people right off the bat. Since we're the Bar Association, we have a weekly online newsletter that always has something about our program in it. And in our monthly magazine, there's always something like a Veterans Volunteer Attorney Spotlight. So we're always constantly hitting the volunteers with our opportunities to volunteer, so they always know about us. I mean, we also spend a lot of time learning who the pro bono coordinators are at law firms across the town. And then once you meet up with them, you can pitch to one person who then can go to the people in their firm and help out. We also have an advisory council of well-respected lawyers and veteran lawyers, who are attorneys who are veterans. And so, that helps. It gives us some credibility that these people who have been doing it for a long time and been successful support this program. So, we also then go to like section meetings of the bar, and they usually will give us a couple minutes at the beginning of their meeting. We're lucky here in Austin that we have UT Law School. So we get a hold of law students and get it in their head to do pro bono long before they get out of law school. And that really helps. We also go after attorneys who are retired but still active, looking for a chance to show up at the clinic and talk with someone. They've been a great resource. And, we always right away with the new lawyers, the people who just got licensed, they get a mailer from us asking them, hey, congratulations on passing the bar. Would you like to volunteer at one of our clinics? So, but one thing you have to understand is that volunteers are going to come and go. They're going to be fired up for a while, and they're going to do some great work for you, and then they're going to go someplace else. Or if they have a really bad experience, they're going to end up blocking you. You just can't get upset if your volunteers go away. You just move on to the next one and try to make everybody as happy as possible.
So I have the luxury of relying on Doug and the Volunteer Legal Services of Austin for our local Austin volunteers. We are a statewide program, and we administer Texas free legal answers. So we're trying to do a better job of educating volunteers on that platform, on the free legal answers platform, about veterans issues. And hopefully the intent, we've got newsletters where we give those volunteers opportunities to move beyond sort of the chat email services, so that they would perhaps one day take on a protective order case or discharge upgrade. That's how we're hoping to leverage some of the statewide remote work that we do around with pro bono volunteers right now. But really, we do have the luxury of relying on folks like Doug and others in the Texas legal aid ecosystem to manage volunteers. We often are most in a position of referring out to those organizations.
Yeah, and that's a great point that Doug raised about law students. I forgot to mention that, but that's another really, get them young, get them excited, get them trained up. They have so much energy, and they, for some reason, have a lot of time and want to volunteer. I don't remember feeling like that when I was in law school, but that seems to be our experience with them. So that's been a very helpful resource for us.
And they're all incredibly tech proficient.
Mm-hmm.
They can solve any tech issue when you have them at your clinic. It's like having portable IT people.
Thank you, guys. We are now moving into the Q&A session. The first one I received says, can Mo share more details about the VA attorney listserv that she mentioned?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So it's run by William and Mary School of Law. They have a veterans law clinic, and it is, from what I can tell, a lot of the professors who teach the veterans law legal clinics across the country in various law schools, as well as legal services organization attorneys who are practicing veterans law. So it's a national listserv, and it's often, case questions like, I got this case decision or this VA claim decision and it doesn't make sense. How would you guys handle it? To, we're putting on this training, please attend, share it with your networks, those sorts of opportunities. And if my recollection is, if you go on the William and Mary Law School listserv, like if you Google that, there was some way on their website to be able to sign up for it. But if you reach out, if that doesn't work, if you go on William and Mary's website and you find the folks, the professors, the clinical folks who run the legal clinic for veterans at that law school, and reach out to them, because I'm sure their contact information is online, they would be able to give you more information about how to get signed up for that. But it's a pretty active listserv, and it's been very helpful to me over the years, and vice versa, been able to share, our knowledge, and it's just, yeah, it's a good resource.
Thank you. The next one is, have you noticed more volunteers asking for remote volunteering opportunities, and have you been able to accommodate for them?
I have. We've been there was a time pre-COVID when we would have law firm volunteers, and they would come in a group, go to the clinic, and then maybe go out to eat afterwards. It'd be like a group project, team building thing. But now a lot of attorneys themselves are remote, and they're at home, or they're really busy and don't have the time to take, traffic in Austin can be nasty. It could take you an hour to drive to the clinic. And we much like the applicants wanting to do videos, the attorneys are too. They prefer videos to phone calls, because when you can see someone, there are visual clues that you can tell whether or not they're telling the truth, or they're and a lot of times, the applicant also wants to look at the attorney and see if they're giving them any visual clues about what their case is like. So we've seen an uptake in volunteers wanting to do it, and we have a whole list of volunteers who are remote only, video or phone only.
Yeah, similar for us. Because this is a federal administrative practice area, you don't need to be licensed in California in our case, to be able to assist folks in discharge upgrade work. So we get lawyers from all over the country. We may have a relationship with the San Francisco office of that, law firm, but they'll, send out the opportunity to folks all around. And so we have folks everywhere doing this work. And it's, we definitely see folks who want to do, like I mentioned, that stand down last weekend, like they want to come in person, they want to go to those events and meet with folks. But one of the benefits of doing a legal clinic, for example, on Zoom, is sometimes the clients don't show up, right? And so you go all the way down to San Jose, you sat in an hour worth of traffic, and it's a slow day. Whereas if you're on Zoom and the client you have an appointment with doesn't, make it, you just go back to work. And that's a lot less of a bummer than having to, then drive another hour home. So it's been nice.
How do you start new relationships with local partners?
Similar to like what Doug was saying about the pro bono coordinators, for partnerships with law firms, that's an excellent starting point. Identifying who is that person at that law firm, and having a meeting with them, having coffee with them, or a Zoom meeting, and we sometimes sort of our entree with a new relationship with a pro bono firm is to go in and do a CLE training with folks. The firm will provide snacks or lunch, and they'll do all the CLE credit stuff that needs to happen to make it more appealable for folks to come in. And then we basically give them our spiel and train them up. And it's not all the training they need to take a case necessarily. It might be enough of a training to be able to go to a clinic though, and then they get their feet wet and they're interested and they want to do more. And then in terms of like just partners to do work with, like at the VA, I'll say the VA can be hard to penetrate if you don't have an existing relationship. Identifying who's going to be your point person there and advocate. We've had luck with VJO social workers, Veterans Justice Outreach social workers. They are often the folks who are involved with, if there's like a veteran treatment court or diversion court in the area. I know some folks have those. That's a good starting point to connect with vets, or the social workers. If there's somebody at the VA facility, and maybe just trying to start with an enrollment office or a patient advocate office, and just try to like get some names, contact information of who would be a good person to connect with. Yeah, but that one can be tough if you don't have an existing relationship.
One thing for us is having a technology and a product to show off and to be out in the community with, where we're going to a judge's office or a community center where we can invite multiple stakeholders. So for instance, the City of Austin's lead on veteran services came out to one of our presentations on a kiosk at a local library, which helped facilitate other connections. So having that new technology, having the kiosk to sort of sell to the community has been really empowering for us to make connections with people. So just having this new project to talk about, it sounds like some of what Mo was talking about as well, with what they're trying to do to make certain documents more accessible to their just having that to talk about, having that new initiative to take out to the community is really helpful.
Oh, and I would add, I do a lot of cold calling. I just call up organizations and say, hey, I'm Doug Lawrence. I'm with the Veterans Legal Assistance Program, and I see that you guys have a food pantry. And is there anything we can work together on? And that works a lot better than trying to sell someone something. So when you call them up, they're more receptive when you ask about working together. And also when you're doing an intake with clients and ask them where they've been. And sometimes we call up those other agencies and say, hey, we have clients in common. We need to meet and discuss how we can help each other get them services.
Yeah, and I was going to add that there are throughout the country vet centers, which are counseling centers for veterans. Each of them it's a VA facility, but they are operated a little differently and have different eligibility criteria than main VA hospitals do. And they provide therapy to folks. I think they're mandated to provide it to folks who've experienced combat or military sexual trauma. But my understanding is that each one has different different rules, and some are more lax. That is another resource that we've connected with that has been helpful to sort of, put a lawyer at a place where folks are getting their mental health counseling. And they serve, or the ones that at least that I've worked with, serve folks with less than honorable discharges. So for example, if you're doing this discharge upgrade work, going into a VA clinic, you're maybe less helpful because so many of those folks maybe are already VA enrolled, don't have a discharge related barrier, but the folks at the vet center may. And then also there is a grant that the VA provides to provide housing and housing assistance to folks who are homeless or at risk of homeless, and it's called SSVF, Supportive Services for Veteran Families. And there's a list on the internet that the VA has of all of the grantees that receive that funding. So that's obviously going to be, there's, you know, organizations, some veteran specific, some who are serving vets and non-vets, but are going to be a, oh, thank you, Bailey. That's basically a list of, you know, organizations in your area who are interfacing with veterans who are dealing with housing instability, right? So that's going to be a client population you might want to connect with. That's another resource. And then the last thing I was going to mention is that in addition to law firm pro bono partners, there's also in-house counsel pro bono partners. There's been a trend in the last, seen in the last few years of a lot of companies who want to do more pro bono work. And a lot of companies have veteran employee affinity groups. And so figuring out, you know, at the local corporation that's housed in your area, you know, if they have a veteran employee group, that might be good to connect with, offer to come do a training. And, you know, maybe that's a mix of lawyers and non-lawyers at that company, but, you know, sometimes you can, you know, involve non-lawyers in the work you're trying to do as well, or partner them up with a lawyer, things like that.
Okay, we have reached our time for today. I want to thank you. As we close today's session, just want to extend our deepest gratitude to all who have served. In honor of Veterans Day, we are proud to continue supporting veterans through the initiatives shared by Mo, Kevin, and Doug. Thank you for your service, your sacrifice, and your continued impact on our communities. If anybody would like to reach out to Kevin, Doug, or Mo, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. We would be happy to share an email address or phone number, whatever they've provided to us, so that you can reach out to them with your additional questions. My email address is my first name, Leslie, Leslie, at A2J Please feel free to reach out to me by email if you have any questions or need anything from this webinar. Thank you guys again for your help, for your time.
Thank you, Leslie.
Have a
Thanks,
great
Leslie.
day.
Bye-bye.